Hello and welcome to another MicroTasker Shorts video. In this video we'll be configuring a FRDM-K66 board to run the MicroTasker serial loader in its Ethernet web browser mode. For this demonstration I'm using Visual Studio rather than KDS. However, any IDE can use since the techniques are very similar. If you're not yet familiar with building the project or importing it into the IDE, there are other videos to watch and the links to those are made at the bottom of this video itself. We're going to be starting by checking the configuration of the project. So I open up config.h. In config.h I'm verifying that I have my target set up as required. Here I do have the FRDM-K66 board selected. I'm going to make sure that I've got USB because there'll be a little demonstration of USB included as well. Here I have the USB interface enabled and I have USB-MSD device loader mode. Continuing, we'll check the Ethernet configuration. Here we have Ethernet enabled, and when Ethernet is enabled we have IP, we have TCP. I don't have UDP enabled because that's not useful for the services that we require. I have an HTTP server enabled. I could enable FTP server and so on, but we don't need that in this particular mode, which I'm going to show. And I also have ping enabled. That allows us to do a quick test of the communication via Ethernet by pinging the board as well. In the web interface file, which contains all of this interface code, I have a fixed IP address. This is the address here. It is also possible to enable DHCP if required, but I prefer to use a fixed one today. In the Visual Studio environment, I can also select a target which does me a post GNU build. So now we can build the project. Here we see that the post build make file is called so that we do a cross compile for the target in question. Now that the build is complete, I can connect my board. Here the board has appeared as an external hard disk, and now I can search for the binary file which was created. Here it is in the MicroTasker serial bootloader and in the GNU folder, and here we see the binary that has just been created, so I can drag and drop that onto the board to program it. So that we can get a better idea of what's taking place, I've connected also a terminal emulator to the UART of the board. So if I make a reset of the serial loader, we can see that it's alive. The next thing I'm going to do is to take a web browser and connect to the board on its local. Here we have the default page showing that we're on the correct board, and the board is telling us that we've got no application. So what I can do now is to load an application. I have one which I prepared earlier. This is the one here. So let's open that and just drop it onto the board. That's completed. So if we now watch the interface here, we see that we've got an application running. This is the application which we just loaded. Now the application running on this board is at a different default IP address. So there we see that at the moment it's got no web pages loaded. So I'm going to load some by taking the default web pages from the MicroTasker project. And there's a bat file here which allows me to very quickly upload them via FTP. That's completed. So if I go back to the web browser and refresh, we'll now see that we have some web pages on there. Some of them are doing half interesting things. For example, here we can say we want to have a multiplication table. Let's have one of 8 by 15. There we are, the board's generating some dynamic content for us. Just to show that we have an application loaded, the application is live. What I now do is reset the board and hold down its switch so that I get back into the bootloader. Now it's running its bootloader again. And before continuing, I'm connecting the USB of the board. Now we can see here that it enumerated. And now if I look at the disk, I can see that we have an upload disk which is now been attached to it. And here we see a file. It says webload.bin. Now, because when we do a loading via the web browser, there's no information about the file's name itself. This is just a dummy name which was created so that we can see, oh yes, the application was loaded via the web interface rather than by the USB-MSD interface. Here I can delete it if I wanted and reload new code. But because we're concentrating on the web browser, I'm going to go back to the web browser page and we're going to do a refresh at its bootloader address. Here we see now that we have software detected. Now when there is software already loaded on the board, it's not possible for me to upload new software without first deleting the original one. If I try to delete it without knowing the password, I'm not going to get very far. So what I need to know is the password required to do this, and this can be found in the project file, the web interface, which allows you to set up any password you like to protect uploading new files to the board, and also to set up a mass erased password if you would like. The mass erased password can be useful, for example, when you secure the device and you want to unsecure it again later on. So now what I'm going to do here is delete the code and upload some new again. So I enter the password, I do an erase application. This time it worked. So we see here no application software present again, and that means that I can go back with my browser, search for a new software version that I'd like to upload, and again just post it. And once again, after a couple of seconds, we see that the upload is completed and the application is running as before. Many thanks for watching. I hope that you found the video interesting and also can make good use of the Ethernet loader built into the MicroTasker project.